Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gabby Logan. We are live, but we're waiting for everybody to file in. I've just been informed by Amy, who I'll introduce formally in a moment, that apparently the Zoom webinars take a bit of time to let you all in one by one. So I don't want to start officially until you're all here and ready in the room. I hope you're all having a lovely Wednesday, and it's great that you can all join us as well, because I think you're all going to enjoy the next hour or so. We do have a great panel. I'll introduce them in just a moment, and we're going to be discussing what sustainability means for the property market, the estate and the lettings market in particular, and what the current state of sustainability looks like in the sector, and then the kind of steps that are being taken and how that can improve. And that's coming from a panel who've got their own experiences, their own ideas, and they will share their learnings and their anecdotes really, and initiatives about what they've been doing, what they've seen, and what best practice might look like. So they're going to do that, as well as you contributing, hopefully, after we've had a Q&A with them with your questions. You may have come armed with questions already, or you may be prompted throughout the Q&A to ask questions. So I will do my best to leave 10 minutes or so at the end to make sure we have time to hear from you as well. So post those questions if you can along the way. And as I say, I will get to those for you. As well as all of this, very excitingly, we are going to be introducing the Agents for Sustainability report that Just Move In are producing, and invite viewers to complete the survey as well. And there will be an incentive for you to do that. At the moment, it sounds like one of my guests has got something going on in noise-wise where they are. I don't know who that is, but we can maybe sort that out. It sounds like there's a musical concert going on next door to wherever they live. But we will hopefully get that sorted, and I can introduce them to you now. So our panelists today are, first of all, Amy Clark, who is a board member at B Corp UK, co-founder and chief impact officer at Tribe Impact Capital. Tribe is the UK's first and only dedicated impact wealth manager, which focuses on managing wealth holders' money for positive financial return and social and environmental impact. It's also a B Corp itself. Sarah Edmondson, give us a wave, Amy, just so that everybody can see where you are. Sarah Edmondson is CEO of Agents Together, and Agents Together is a foundation which focuses on creating a really positive future for the estate agency industry through two pillars of healthy mind and healthy business. And Mary, oh, give us a wave, Sarah. Give us a wave. There you are. Mary Beaton is head of residential sales, Hamptons, and Mary also heads up Hamptons Project Planet Group, which focuses on making businesses more environmentally conscious about what they're doing, taking stock of their overall consumption and looking at ways to make a positive contribution to the planet. Mary is there waving away as well. Tom Old is the co-founder of Just Move In, which is handy because there's a Just Move In billboard in his living room. So that's a nice coincidence. And so you know who he is. They, of course, provide a home setup service where they take care of time-consuming admin for you movers, such as informing the council, switching utilities and utility providers, finding deals on TV and broadband, making sure basically when you move in, everything is just how you want it when it comes to those really fiddly, messy, boring jobs. And as a certified B Corp, Just Move In helps their customers switch to renewable energy and plant mangrove trees for every person they serve, which is actually the incentive for filling in the survey later, but I'll explain that to you a little bit later on. And Tom, give us a wave, a formal wave. And finally, Grant Leonard is managing director of Property Drum, which publishes The Negotiator. And he is in the center of my screen, but maybe not yours. Hello, Grant. Okay. Hey guys, so you can all come on now, and hopefully sounds good from everybody. So let's kick off then with a question about what Agents for Sustainability is, Tom.
Great, thank you, Gabby. Well, I guess it's a campaign, a collection of individuals, collection of organisations that want to raise the profile of sustainability within the industry. And before we jump in too far, I guess it's worth acknowledging that in our view, sustainability isn't just about the environment or climate, but we are in a very important year, beginning of this decade. The UK government has just announced emissions reduction target of 78% by 2035 and is hosting COP26. So there is a lot of focus on climate and emissions. Today, we hope to discuss and to dig into kind of three areas. One is, what are those tangible actions that agencies can go and deliver to help their their businesses operate more sustainably. Two, I think acknowledging that 40% of emissions comes from households. How could or should an agency positively influence homes that they interact with, be that via landlords, sellers, buyers, or tenants? And hopefully we'll also identify some of the risks and trends that are going to take place over the course of this decade, and just kind of put those on people's radar. So lots to try and cover. This webinar is going to be the first of a series of events and guides, and we hope that it delivers some thought-provoking conversation.
Thanks, Tom. It feels, Amy, like this is really a growing movement. Coincidentally, I spoke yesterday to Richard Curtis, who is behind Make My Money Matter. And in researching that interview, learned so much more about what is going on in this space and the drive for investors to really understand where their money is going and how it's making an impact. So this is going to make businesses so much more aware, isn't it, of their own sustainability kind of program and where they sit in this whole ESG marketplace. What do you think the role of businesses is?
Well, it's really interesting, and it's great that you've interviewed Richard Curtis as well. We're a campaign partner for the Make My Money Matter platform that's been rolling out over the last, gosh, what, probably a year now. Tom's talking about the next decade, and I think not just in investment, but I think across the board, when we look at all industries, this is the decade of disruption. The status quo is shifting across all industry sectors. You look at the internal combustion engine and the move to electric vehicles. You look at meat and dairy and the move to plant-based foods and beverages. You look at fast fashion and the move to slow and circular fashion. Everything is starting to shift, and it's happening in investment as well. And the two drivers for this are risk and opportunity. So when we think about sustainability in its broadest terms, I think one of the best frameworks you can look at to understand what sustainability truly looks like is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal Framework, which is a very comprehensive set of metrics and targets that outline what the safe space we need to create where everyone and everything can thrive. This defines what the key risks are and what the key opportunities are. And sustainability is literally that. It's good risk management. And risks, you know, speak to any sort of seasoned financier or banker, and they'll always tell you that risk is unmanaged opportunity. If you understand risk and you know how to manage it, you can pivot it into an opportunity. And this is exactly what sustainability is. It's responding to growing demands for more responsible businesses, more ethical businesses. It's, to Tom's point, it's taking the shifts that are happening in regulation and policy towards more sustainable futures. And it's understanding where you're going to get your future consumers from, and where you're going to get your future talent from as well, your employees. So sustainability has to always be taken as not just an approach to risk management, but actually an opportunity enhancement. And that's very much why we set up our business the way that we did. When we look at real estate more generally, this is one of probably the last frontiers in businesses out there, really sort of to drive so much of the change that we need to see, both environmentally, again, to Tom's point, around emissions, but also socially around access to housing, access to accommodation. You know, there's a huge amount of opportunity out there for the real estate sector. So sustainability, I think, for anyone listening to this webinar, has got to be seen as not just risk management, but probably the biggest opportunity they will have to future-proof their businesses. And if they don't disrupt themselves, they'll be disrupted.
Tom, would you agree with that? Is there anything you'd add to that on what the role of business is in sustainability?
Well, I think I agree with what's just been said there, but I think it's worth stepping back and saying there's three kind of, say, key actors on the world stage that can deliver change. And one is we have governments, and they can influence policy, but they are, I said, in theory, beholden to, I guess, citizens and kind of their votes. Citizens can also vote to their power of choice and consumerism, and they can choose who to go and buy their products from. And so that third actor, governments, individuals, citizens, is businesses. And businesses need to make sure that they are presenting and providing a set of products that serves the needs of and trends of consumers. And that's a two-way relationship. So consumers or citizens may choose greener products, but businesses need to make those greener products available. And I think a combination of those three actors will deliver change. but the businesses have a critical role on the world stage to play, and they can act quickly. I think that's the other important point to make.
And so bringing this relevant and kind of to the audience that we have here, Sarah, how aware do you think agents are of the role that they have to play in all of this?
Well, thanks, Gabby. And I really agree with everything that Amy and Tom have already said. I think with regards to the awareness from agents are, and I work with thousands of them, fundamentally really good people, and they want to do a really good job. The difference being is they are very busy people, and sometimes it's not necessarily the awareness that is lacking, but it is the ability to prioritize something like sustainability into their business when they're run ragged trying to help consumers in what is possibly the most emotional time of their life. So in a nutshell, I think that there's definitely a growing awareness, but I also think that then where agents need help, and what we're all here to do today, is to try to help them to prioritize and understand that actually there are small wins as well as much larger strategic changes that you can make in order to have a great impact. So yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, because Grant, it might not at first seem like an industry that needs a lot of kind of reshaping when it comes to the, the role in sustainability, and you kind of, well, what's my carbon footprint? How can I make a difference? And I think that perhaps, more information needed, do you think, Grant?
Yes, everybody has a carbon footprint. That's an important point to make. And I think communicating how agents can do that, from the tiniest of steps through to the where it's like, shall we go paperless? Shall we not? Should we not use plastic coffee cups? Right through to the MD of a company appointing someone perhaps as their sustainability champion for the company, and taking the first step, which is a great thing. I get the impression that, in fact, I'm telling you, that lots of people haven't taken that first step because they don't know what it should be or could be. And I think, well, through our magazine, through Negotiator, we've with the help of Just Move In as well, we've set ourselves a task to help in that. The latest issue cover. You see, how green is your branch? See what I did there. So it's highlighting what they can do now and how they can start. And I think, unfortunately, I've done a little bit of sort of journalistic digging around, and there doesn't seem to, we seem to be on our own a little bit with this. There are, associations and such as the Property Mark or the Federation of Small Businesses, they don't seem to be doing anything. It's obviously on their charter. They will be doing it in due course, but right now, there's nothing much happening. And right now is the issue. Right now the government is setting incredibly difficult targets. We're having a major conference on climate change here in the UK at the end of the year. It's happening now, and we need to start it now. So, well, from our point of view as a trade magazine, we want to help to point the way, and we're going to set out to do that.
I suppose the question is then, Mary, as an agency, what are the barriers that are stopping agents becoming more sustainable, and what do you think can be done? What is the biggest challenge, I guess?
I think the challenges to agents, realistically, we've touched on a couple of them already, are time. That I think in any business, people are very busy, but I think agents would say that time and therefore resource is a barrier and something that might be stopping them. Budget, I think there's a fear that it's going to cost money. What will we have to spend to do this? And who will we need to employ, and how much, again, going back to time, is that going to take? And then it's knowledge. It's actually just a lack of confidence, because the people on this panel might be gurus, not me, but many gurus are out there. But actually, we're estate agents. We don't know that much about it. So I think those are the three main barriers. It's time and resource. It's fear of budget, and it's a lack of knowledge, really, or a lack of confidence.
Like a lot of investments, though, Sarah, in your business, it's going to pay dividends, isn't it? Because the movement is only going to grow, and the consumer is going to start demanding this of businesses, and that applies to agencies.
Absolutely. I feel very strongly about this. I think Amy summarised it perfectly. it's risk and opportunity. And what I see the estate agency community having here right at, in their grasp is opportunity, an opportunity to not only obviously have a fantastically positive impact on the world that they operate in and for their families and their friends and themselves, but actually a real impact on the longevity of their business, in terms of the fact that the consumers of tomorrow, the millennial and Gen Z consumers, are going to be demanding more. We heard from Amy, she said that as well, of the businesses that they are interacting with. And likewise, so are the employees. So if I'm a business owner in the estate agency industry, it might seem like, quite a big ask to suddenly become very sustainable. But not only are you doing the right thing, you're actually going to be able to do a huge amount in terms of attracting talent, a huge amount in terms of attracting consumers. We only have to look at, I use this example a lot, but BrewDog, they've done a fantastic amount. It is essentially their USP, and they've got a phenomenally successful business as well. So you can do both. And I think that that's the key message will always be from me. I'm a businesswoman at heart. I want to see estate agents thrive, but I think this actually is a really great way that they can do so, and slightly against the norm.
And Amy, what do you see as the main benefits? Tom, I'll bring you in as well. Amy, you first.
Yeah, well, let me cite some statistics which hopefully will do the job. So in 2018, if we look at, BrewDog's recently certified as a B Corporation, which is fantastic. So if I put my B Corp hat on, in 2018, pre the pandemic, B Corps were proven to be growing at a rate that was 28 times faster than the national average. Now that's extraordinary when you consider what it is. Now that's 14% year-on-year growth against a national growth rate, I think it was about 2.5. So, extreme levels of kind of outperformance from a growth point of view. Now, early in 2020, another survey was done that looked at the growth rate specific to the UK, and they were for ethically driven businesses. So this was a broader community, not just B Corps, but sort of those businesses that had fused sustainability into and across their entire businesses. It was between 4 and 13 times faster growth than their counterparts. We also saw during the last economic downturn, so 2008, 2009, with the B Corp community in the US, because that's where the B corporations came from, they were 64% more likely to survive an economic downturn than their non-B Corp counterparts. So we know, because B Corp is literally about being sustainable and being mission-driven and purposeful, that you can increase the resilience of your business through economic times of underperformance more nationally, but you can also increase the level of outperformance that you get in terms of your growth rate. We also know that last year in the UK, just before we launched something called the Better Business Act, which is now live in the UK, which is calling for all businesses in the UK to effectively be mandated to have mission and purpose fused into their governing articles. So this is going for company law in the UK, section 172, rewriting it to fuse purpose and mission. So this is every business, public and private. 75% of the UK public agreed that this needed to happen. So there's a little bit of risk and a little bit of opportunity in those stats.
And there will, and you mentioned legislation there as well. And that's a factor, isn't it, Tom? Because there's peer pressure that makes change, there's legislation, and it's going to be a fusion of the two, isn't it? So to get ahead of that inevitable kind of legislation that is going to come, isn't it, to force businesses to really address these issues would seem to be a smart move.
Definitely. I think there needs to be, I think what's very interesting and fantastic to see over the last 5 years since we've been operating is the public mood and the profile of sustainability within every part of our lives. I think it's moved from being a niche topic into a normalized topic. And I think that's one of the things we'd like to achieve with this webinar and future events and bits of communication. It needs to be baked into every decision we make. And by an employee at an agency raising or asking the question to their manager, what's our sustainability strategy? What can we do? That shouldn't be seen as alien, strange, or nichey. It should be absolutely normal. And if an organization of any shape or size doesn't have some form of obvious actions that they can take, however big or small, then they're going backwards, and in a number of different senses. And I think it's also worth acknowledging, and I think this has been recognised more recently, that it's touched on by Amy there, but there is no longer, I hope, the perception of sustainability competing with commercial goals of a business. They are utterly aligned, and commercial sustainability is just as important as it's part of that same formula. And if you can structure your business that those two things are being delivered and at the same time, then you will have a stronger business for it, as highlighted by the stats that Amy's just sort of given there. So it is a normal thing to talk about and to discuss. And I think if we, as a collection of organisations and other organisations within the industry, even those smallest actions will help, because they just help lift the bar. And then there's another action on top of that, and another action. And if people can talk about that and talk to their friends who run an agency down the road, well, then it's no longer a niche topic of conversation. It's what have you done recently? And slowly, as a collective, we can just raise that bar and deliver more and more.
Indeed. And just a reminder, if you joined a little bit later for some reason, we do want your questions too, because about 10 minutes before we finish, we'll open it out to the floor. A couple of questions are already coming in. I will save those and ask the panel a little bit later. So I guess practical advice, really. What areas should businesses be looking to improve, Amy, in terms of their sustainability credentials?
I think it very much depends on what business you're running. So when you are aware of all of the sustainability issues that you have, whether they're environment, whether they're social, whether they're governance related, the next best step for you to do is to think about the ones that are material for your business, the ones that really, really apply to what it is that you're doing, how you're operating, and the core product and the service that you have. So if I use myself and my business as an example, we're an investment manager. We manage people's money. We're putting capital out to play in the markets. So the material risks for us are in where we place that money. How do we ensure that we're safeguarding people's wealth and making sure that it's future-proof for sustainable long-term financial performance? So that for us is a big, big issue from a product and a service point of view. But then when I think about operationally, how we treat our staff, how we create a really good working environment for our staff, how we make sure that there's not massive differentials between what we tend to refer to as shop floor to top floor pay. So it's not that the management are creaming off all the profits and everybody's working, really, really hard and getting paid peanuts. So you're thinking then about, or we're thinking about our employees. Our environmental footprint as an investment management house is actually directly is very, very small. We're 17, 18 actually people now in a tiny little office. So we don't have a massive environmental impact in our direct activities, but indirectly through our core product and service, we have huge impact. Again, so we're thinking, okay, well, environmental direct, not a material issue, environment indirectly, massive issue. So you have to sort of do this almost this kind of mapping process across your business to work out where the material risks and opportunities are, and then you focus and prioritize. And to Tom's point, you may not have the bandwidth to tackle everything at the same time, but put it into a plan and put the timetables down, put the metrics down where you want to get to and by when, and then just steadily start working through it.
And I guess, Grant, as well, at some point, as the person who kind of curates so much of what's going on in the industry, there will be some kind of metric that people are going to demand, aren't they? And say, well, is this agency a 5-star or however it's rated? Every industry and every product has its own way of measuring these things. And that's something that you're going to have to perhaps look at.
Well, it may not be, it is something we are looking at. We have an awards every year, the Negotiator Awards, and we are this year introducing a Sustainable Agency of the Year Awards. People can enter and say what they've been doing, which could set a good example. But having spoken to, I spoke to the Surrey Chamber of Commerce, and they have a kind of, if you like, they're working on a kind of a count mark, which I think is a great idea. So in terms of measuring your good business practices and sustainability, if we can introduce that into the industry, that would give everybody something to look at, to strive towards. It would give them, like I said, certain metrics to aim at. Who should do that? Well, we have associations such as Property Mark. We would look to them. We have a wonderful new charity for agents, Agents Together. I think Sarah is actually discussing something similar. And these are things that agents can use to get more specific about how they can frame their sustainability in terms of business benefit. They can set themselves aside from other agents. They can take the lead among agents in their area on sustainability. The other agents will follow. In fact, agents shouldn't be second to this. They should all try and be first. And that is a point of differentiation for them, which agents are always keen to have vis-a-vis others. So there is a lot in it for agents. Those first steps are important. They can be simple steps. Yes, if there were a way of a kite mark, a certification, something they could stick on their window that people could see, that would go a long way, I think, to making sense to an agent about how he should be approaching this, and also show something about the business.
So go on then, Mary, tell us a little bit about what you're doing already to become more sustainable, to tackle environmental damage that potentially your agency is creating or has in the past.
Yeah, and I echo the message that a few people have already said. You might not necessarily be able to do everything straight away. So certainly from a Hamptons point of view, we started small, and it started with, there's no individual who heads up, our sustainability project. This is absolutely a group of passionate people from across the business who came together, and we meet monthly and we talk about the sorts of things we can do. And we started small, we engaged the business, we communicate regularly with the business, we include it in our training, our induction, and it's become part of our kind of core values. So everybody that works for the business knows it's part of, it's very much something we believe in and want to do as much as we can with. But we started small. We started with quick wins. We changed all our boards to recyclable boards, our paper to recyclable. We made sure our brochures and our flyers weren't laminated. It didn't cost us any money. We were going to spend money on those things anyway. It costs the same. And okay, the flyer might look a little bit less glossy, but it's the right thing to do. And actually the person receiving it through the letterbox gets that it's the right thing to do if it doesn't look that bit glossy. So using FSC certified printers, little things, changing our water dispensers, so that actually if you come to our office, you can have a glass of water from the tap, but we won't be using lots of plastic cups and plastic water dispensers. Plastic bin liners. I mean, these are all just little things, and sharing top tips in our newsletters. Turn off your printer and your PC overnight became a company policy, but it's also something you can do at home that will make a difference. We don't send out paper documents or brochures anymore unless it's specifically requested. Anyone can sign a document online these days, and you don't need a brochure. Look at it online. So of course, if somebody needs one, we'll still send it. We'll be commercial about that, but it's these little things, biodegradable cleaning products, just changing those in your office. So all those things will cost you no more money, no more time, not require any more resource. Any agent can do that any day going forward now. And all of those things collectively will make a big difference. And then we also engage, so our business is really engaged with it. Not everybody, of course, but just things like arranging activities, beach clean. So we all went, a group of us went down to Brighton to do a big beach clean recently. Engaging our local community. So agents all know, we all work with local schools already. You see the boards everywhere about the Christmas fair or the Easter egg hunt or whatever it might be. Actually, we have, where we've got offices with outside space, we don't use them. So we've given those to schools. So our Northcote Road office, for example, the local school uses that as their own garden now, and they come and they grow their veggies and do that side of things. So it's a lovely way of engaging with the local community, but also just to underline the fact that we are thinking outside our own kind of commercial wins. And then we moved on to partnerships. So again, these don't have to cost money. We partner with Refill, which means that we don't, people won't use single-use plastic bottles. They'll go to our office. Anybody can walk into a Hamptons branch anytime and have a refill of their water bottle. Again, didn't cost us a penny. Great piece of PR for Hamptons. So commercially, it's a win for us, but more importantly, it's a win in terms of sustainability. And then Woodland Trust in our 150th year, we planted 150 trees. Again, we did pay for that, but it was a special year and we wanted to do that.
And then starting to look a bit bigger as well. So those are all the things we did in the early days that any agent can do now. And then starting to think a bit bigger, looking to our fleet provider, making sure that electric cars are an option. That's something that's taken us a while to do. We were contracted, but we're now moving forward to a new fleet provider that can do that for us. And then this partnership with Just Move In. And again, that's something that any agent can engage with Just Move In with. But that sort of move and partnership is saving our customer time, it's saving our customer money. And then obviously there's the environmental positives as well. So I do think that estate agents, because we have this unique position of being part of everybody's home move and being able to, have all of the, databases of hundreds of thousands of people who come to us principally around property needs. So, we can A, save our customer time, money, B, it becomes a differentiator, as everybody said today, in terms of who you're going to use as an agent, but also who you might go and work for as an agent. But things like, the changing to green energy, planting a mangrove tree, and also we are now using, we don't want to profit from it. So anything we make from a referral point of view, we'll give to the Marine Conservation Society. So we'll hope to raise about £20,000 a year for the Marine Conservation Society because of our partnership with Just Move In. So you can see we started small with plastic bin liners, and now we're actually using our size and scale to get out there and make sure that we're going to make a bigger difference. And again, if all agents did that, work together for it, what a difference that would make.
And you mentioned your partnership with Just Move In. Tom, it seems a good time for you to tell us a little bit more about, because actually thinking about Mary's kind of the movement that they've achieved and what they're doing is really both good for the environment, but also really good for the business in terms of how you connect with the community. You're kind of almost seeing the customer at a point where you can really influence how they live their lives. A lot of people won't have moved for years. They might not have needed an electric charger for their car before, or they might not have thought about how, their new house can be more sustainable in terms of lighting or heating.
Yeah, I think, going back to Mary's point, it's really great to hear almost the journey that Hamptons have gone through from the very first action and what you've achieved in the last few years, and actually what can then be achieved in the next few years, and it starts to really ramp up at that point. I think from Just Move In perspective, I'll kind of reel off a few points. As a company, we've acknowledged that we're a B Corporation, which means that we scrutinise every aspect of how we operate and how we work, from the suppliers that we work with and recommend, through to having living wage in place, internal diversity, as an example. We're also pleased to announce this week that we have just signed up to the 1% for the Planet initiative, which commits us to donate 1% of our turnover to charities. Now, the three charities, or the primary charity that we work with, is one that plants mangrove trees in Myanmar. And the mangrove trees are one of the most they are the most carbon sequestering tree out there. So it delivers significant impact. We have a corporate relationship with the Wildlife Trust. So we think it's important to engage locally with the local community and to encourage our staff to better appreciate the beautiful nature that's on their doorstep. And then the third is an organization called Grounded, and that is teaching people how to grow food. So that's how we're operating at a corporate level. We're then in a very privileged position to work with agencies, and we can, I guess there's a number of things that we'd like to do to support and help agencies become more sustainable, and making donations on their behalf to charities is one. This event in itself is another. And then to your point, Gabby, we think that moving home is a change point in people's lives, and it's an incredible opportunity to positively influence people. Our mission statement is to help the world live better, one home at a time. And I think we will do our best to do that and achieve that goal by working with movers through the service that we provide. Now, a couple of examples: we were one of the first organizations in 2015 to start promoting 100% renewable energy at the point of people moving. We will also take into account the sustainability credentials of other organizations when we make recommendations, and that's something we want to become slicker at and refine, but it's in place today. I think there's also advice we can make around the home move. There's actually quite a lot of waste that's created when people move, And so making sure that waste is disposed of in a sensible and proper way. And I mean, this is a good example, and I'm guilty here. We're not, none of us are perfect. I've got 4 old iPhones sitting next to me in my top drawer, and I haven't chucked them out because I didn't want to put them in a standard bin, but I want to make sure they go to an organization that can, first of all, aim to reuse them or repurpose them, and they can't break them down and then reuse those precious metals. And it's really interesting today, actually in the press today, we've seen a report come out which highlights how precious those precious metals are. And if we want to become and move to an electrified society, we need those metals. There's a finite resource, and often the supply chains for those metals are very vulnerable. So the act that if we can provide some guidance to a mover and encourage them to, let's say, just dispose of any old phones and consumer electronic products in a more sustainable way, well, that's an example of one of the things we plan and would like to do more of. But I'd also actually put that kind of as an obvious action that an agency can instigate. You know, can they act as a collection, put a collection box within their agency to collect old and precious metal or consumer electronics from their staff, or possibly even their movers, and that's another nice action there. So we're doing a fair bit. There's more we'd like to do, and we're on our own journey and trying to ramp that up as much as possible.
Tom, don't leave us all in suspense. What do we do with our old phones then?
Well, there's an example.
Don't bring them around to your drawer.
No, this is a bad example, but we're not, I'd say, not perfect. There's organisations out there like Reconomy who will take these phones. They will be sensitive around the data on them, if there's any data, and then hopefully recondition, repurpose, and reuse them. And if they can't, then those phones are broken down and reused in a sensible way. Or those precious metals are recycled.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, we all know we've moved homes, the amount of cables and old laptops and all those kinds of things. I'm sure all of them would be grateful to receive in other homes somewhere else, whether that's around the world or to be recycled. So good, practical and also useful advice for the consumer there. But what are the other actions then that agents can take to reduce their own environmental damage? And I'm throwing this out to all of you. Sarah, we haven't heard from you for a while. What else can they do?
Nearly didn't unmute myself then. Nearly did it. Yeah, it's really good question. Just if I may, very quickly, Grant mentioned about agents together, and we are going to pick up the baton with recognising businesses for doing the right thing. We're very much in the depths of the planning of that and hoping to launch it in the next couple of months, because we want to acknowledge estate agency businesses, and not only acknowledge, celebrate those businesses that are really doing a good job, not only around sustainability, but also well-being in the workplace and diversity and inclusion, the whole picture all together to make workplaces and the estate agency industry a really great place to be. Sorry, I had to get that in there. But to your point, Gabby, this has got to be a whole business approach, and Mary said it, not everybody gets behind it, but you've got to certainly set out with it being, this is going to be a cultural shift, so you kind of have to get everybody involved here, and people will be involved as much as they wish. You'll get some people who want to spearhead it and drive it forward, and I think actually, if as a decision maker or a business owner, even in a small business, if you raise this with your teams, you'll be surprised how many people would quite like to get involved with this and drive it forward. So I think I would definitely start there, start talking about it, speak to your teams, find out who'd like to drive a project that's a bit extra to their usual day-to-day valuations and viewings and negotiating sales and lettings, and see who wants to run it. I think more practically though, Mary said some really brilliant stuff, and it's brilliant to see a business like Hamptons, really flying the flag for this. But I would say, it starts with things like everything from trying to go paperless, being conscious about the impact that your cars are having. Obviously, that was mentioned. I think, all the obvious stuff about recycling and all the usage stuff that we kind of know we should be doing now, but putting a plan in place is really important. And then there's another thing that I would say here, and this is a real big one. I think it's in line with what Tom was saying, putting a bit of pressure on your suppliers. what, you know, your supply chain is really important. Obviously, we know through Just Move In you can help your consumers to be more consciously sustainable. But what about your suppliers? Are we demanding that of our suppliers as well? We've got a vast amount of prop tech businesses and others in this space, and many of whom find it easier to be to sustainable and less impact on the environment because they are by nature tech businesses, but there's still a lot to be done in that space. So I think we can start asking more of our suppliers and also start seeking out suppliers who help us with our goals. So if there are businesses that help you go paperless, then surely they're the best businesses to be looking at now. So just little things like that. Hopefully that's helpful. But we are going to make a great big long list after this to share amongst us all of things where people can make a start.
And is there anything, Amy, you would add to that list as somebody kind of sitting just kind of outside immediately of the industry, so to speak, but obviously with a vested interest in people?
Yeah, so I was going to actually say, you know, the letting agency industry is no different to the wealth management industry in that you have intermediated access to homes and access to accommodation the same way we have intermediated access to the markets, access to investment markets. And in that reality, you have an upstream and a downstream supply chain, as Sarah was just referring to. You know, you have your clients, so eventually the tenants. For us, it's our wealth holders. And then you have your landlords, and our landlords are the investment managers. And ultimately we have our own product as well, so it's the end businesses as well. So our circle of influence is massive, absolutely massive. You don't, you know, in our industry, you don't have to be BlackRock to create change. In fact, often you can create more change because you're more free and agile the smaller you are. So I would say when you're thinking about the type of where you want to be, for example, in say 3 years time, 5 years time, 10 years time, think about ultimately who it is you want to be as a business. What is it ultimately that you have set yourself up to become? What are the issues that you are therefore tackling, both from a social point of view, access to housing, and an environmental point of view, energy efficiency in the home environment? And then think about your stakeholders in that, well, you've got your tenants and your landlords, and start to think about, okay, how do I work with them? How do I influence the change that's required in my little universe of change? And I think if you start there, you'll elevate the conversation from all of the really important stuff that needs to happen. So, you know, your own energy use, your own paper use, etc., to ultimately what system change can you create out in society? And this is where the next decade is. It's about that big system change piece. And you do not have to be big. You can be small. You can be one person. I think Anita Roddick once famously said, if you think you're too small to create change, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room and see who wins. You know, that you really just focus on what your sphere of influence is and work out where you can create the change.
And Tom, you've told us what you're doing. You know, if you look back and see kind of the agencies that you work with and where people are kind of getting their information, your customers are getting their information, is there anything that you would feed back to the agencies in terms of changes they can make?
Sure, I think, well, I would add one point, which is it's an important point to kind of feed back to agencies, and it's around, I guess, we need to look at those micro actions that can help us on that journey, and then kind of start ramping things up, which is important. But I think as an industry and as agents, you also need to start looking ahead, because it's amazing how time flies. We're already halfway through 2021, and what are the big trends that are happening over the course of this decade? I think you mentioned EVs earlier, Gabby, but there's going to be a huge change in the way that transportation kind of operates as the norm. So when it comes to property listings, should there be an acknowledgement of whether there's an EV charger there, as an example? We've got evidence of people, consumers, I don't like using that word, but consumers making conscious choices to buy products and services in other industries that are greener and more sustainable, and fashion and food are great examples. So with Generation Z, when are they going to start selecting the property that they want to live in based on it being more energy efficient? That should, and it's likely to come through. Likewise, I think there's already early evidence to say that a property that has microgeneration, renewable energy built into it, or is more energy efficient, is then actually worth more from a sort of homeowner's perspective. So I think important to get some of those kind of elements on the radar, and I hope we can collectively kind of unpack and uncover some of those and make sure people are aware of them.
We do have some lovely questions coming in from the floor, but just finally, outside of environmental initiatives, what more can agencies do to have a really good impact, a positive impact on society and local community? And that sounds like such a kind of, a big ask, doesn't it, from an estate agency? But you, Mary, illustrated brilliantly how you can infiltrate the community, and actually it works both ways, doesn't it? Because then you become somebody that the community trusts. So has anybody got anything else they want to add that agencies could do more of? Grant, is there anything that you've been feeling that the agencies could be proactive in?
Well, they are very proactive in charity. Charity is a huge thing for estate agents to become seen as being a contributor to their communities, and it's very well established. We have pages of editorial about charitable initiatives from agencies, and as Mary was saying, this is just a slight step sideways to sustainability. It's part of that whole idea, and agencies, if they look at what they do in terms of their charitable efforts, they will realise that there isn't that much more they have to do to embrace the sort of sustainability angle as well. The two things are almost two sides of the same coin. So just for that penny to drop with them, I think it is a great thing, and for them to see this as a positive for the businesses and for the communities. And also, agents have not had the best press in the past, and the perception of them and the part they play in society. And this is a wonderful way for people to sort of dispel those old stereotypes and tropes and show that agents are great people working for their communities and in their communities.
Okay, we've got some interesting questions coming in. I really want to try and get these. Sorry, Sarah, your point might be made with one of these questions, actually. So if it isn't, we'll come back to it. We'll start with this one from James Ramsden. As an independent agency with only 6 staff, it can be a challenge to focus on being more sustainable. What advice would you give to small businesses in this position? I think, Sarah, that probably is a good one for you to come in on, actually.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, James. And this is absolutely the challenge that we have across the industry. It's made up of lots of small independent businesses, just like yours, James. And in a nutshell, I know how busy you are. I was a small independent estate agent, and I know how busy those offices can be, and especially now. So to answer your question, I think it's about Mary, I keep coming back to Mary, she put it so brilliantly. It's about just choosing some small things that you can do consistently and commit to. Don't try and eat the whole elephant. Cut the elephant into little bits. Don't know where I'm getting this analogy from, and it makes it a lot easier to
yeah, that's not very environmentally friendly, killing elephants.
No, I don't think so. Don't eat the elephant. No, but you get my point. So it's this idea that don't try and do it all at once. Yeah. Start with literally a handful. You should be able to count on one hand 5 key areas that you're going to do to start with. Commit to doing it for a quarter or perhaps 2 consecutive quarters. Review how much progress you've made there. Reward your staff, acknowledge it, celebrate it, share it on your social media and various other things. Tell the story about what you've done, and then review it. And maybe you might realize I can do another 5 things now, but little steps at a time. And James, everybody on this call, I think I speak for, if you want help to try and work out what those 5 things are, I'm almost certain there's lots of nodding going on, that one of us or all of us will be happy to try and help you.
Amy, you mentioned that you partner with Make My Money Matter, and actually if you go on that website, which is a campaigning website, not selling a products per se, there's lots of different ways to look at how you as an individual impact the world. And actually those metrics, I mean, I'm sitting here with a smartwatch on, we all love to know how many steps we've done in a day, how many calories we've burned, all those things. And actually those metrics, I think is it Geeky, the website, is it Geeky? That you go on there and you can work out. So as a business, you've got targets then, haven't you? Would you endorse what Sarah said there about, well, not the elephant so much, but taking it down into small size chunks?
Yeah, parking the elephant in the room, Sarah. At the moment. Yeah, it comes back to, I think, working out what you can do and over what timetable, but also working out what the important stuff is to start with as well. Now, some of the important stuff will be low-hanging fruit and actually be very simple to do. And some of the important stuff might actually be slightly higher up the tree and may require more effort and a little bit longer in terms of the timings to do that. The one thing that I was going to say is, as well, is sustainability and commerciality are the same thing. Sustainability does not sit alongside commerciality. Sustainability is commerciality. So you need to think of being sustainable as just running a good business. And psychologically, it puts you into a completely different place. Then you're not sitting there thinking, oh, I've got to do this, or I've got to invest in that. This is about increasing your efficiency and your efficacy. It's good business. But to Sarah's point, absolutely, just map out what the impacts are within your business and which ones are the low-hanging fruits, which ones are the slightly sort of middle of the tree, which ones are sort of at the top of the tree that may take a little bit more effort, and then plan yourself around those. But do not try and eat the whole elephant. Don't try and boil the ocean at the same, with a kettle, because that's what we've all got at the moment. We've all got kettles. You can't boil the ocean with a kettle. So just, take it slowly, but be clear what it is you're trying to achieve.
I am loving the metaphors today. We've had a mosquito, an elephant, an ocean. Mary, this question might be one for you to tackle first of all. An anonymous attendee asks, do you feel virtual property viewings are ultimately going to create a sustainable system change, changing behaviour to future-proof business for agents and evolving consumer demands? I mean, there's one thing buying a dress from a website, but buying a house without ever physically seeing it, or an apartment, or whatever it is you're going to live in, feels like a ginormous leap of social and human kind of interaction and behaviour. Can you foresee a time when that would happen?
I don't think people would buy a house without seeing it. However, what we've learned so much over the last 15 months or so is that you can do your first viewing online. And actually a lot of that means that you won't do a second viewing at all. And therefore we've just saved some time. We've just saved, we haven't got in our cars, we haven't gone and done viewing. So I think that there's definitely a place for it to continue in this post-COVID world. And actually lettings is a bit different too, because a 1-bedroom flat that you're going to rent for 6 months is very different to a long-term home ownership. So actually we're finding that plenty of people are prepared to rent a property by a virtual viewing, by looking at online. So there's definitely a place for it. I do see it definitely being something that the industry continues to use, and perhaps the reasons for that will be more about sustainability and protecting the environment rather than convenience. But I think the combination of both will mean they keep on going.
Yeah, you can't smell the drains though, can you?
No, that's true.
So see how honest your agent is. I like it, but you can smell the drains. Has anybody else got any opinions on virtual viewings they want to kind of jump in on? Sarah, do you want to come in there?
I would. I'd love to just say I've just recently sold a property to an overseas buyer, and we just did lots of video walkthroughs. I helped her, and she completed without actually physically seeing the property, and it went through a treat. But it was quite an involved process. But I agree with Mary. I think this is actually about efficiency as well. So there's a huge business benefit here as well as the environmental impact. I do agree sales is different to lettings. But I know of a business in Kent who recently did 24 lets in 1 month, all virtual, no physical viewings.
Wow.
So it can be done.
So for letting, certainly probably a much greater opportunity than sales. We are running fast out of time. I'm going to ask one more question before I tell you at the end about the survey we'd like you to get involved with. And this is, if anybody wants to put their hand up, it's quite a good question. It's from an anonymous attendee. Where should agents strive to be in 5 years' time? And let's make these real kind of little nuggets of gems for your answers. Amy.
Grant mentioned earlier, a kite mark, make it become a B Corp kite mark. That's where you should be in 5 years' time. Good one. Anybody else want to add to that? Tom?
I think agencies generally have relatively low footprints themselves. It's an office of small fleet of vehicles. So I think every agency should be powered by 100% renewable energy. It's an very easy thing to do. And secondly, hopefully by that point be carbon neutral, but at least have a clear plan to be carbon neutral.
Excellent. Okay, now, as I promised, Sarah, did you want to come in there?
Sorry, can't help myself. I love the question and answer bit. You might have noticed. I always say these three things when we're looking at things like this. I would suggest that every estate agent seeks to understand their current position. That's first job. Secondly, raise awareness across their whole business and supply chain, both up and down. And then finally, seeks to educate everybody within that group, all those stakeholders, on how they can do things better. That's it. I'll
Well
stop
done. Excellent. Well, this is the moment where there's more interaction for you, our lovely audience, because the Agents for Sustainability report is out, and I'd like you to complete the survey. And it's not going to take you long, just a few minutes. Just Move In are producing this report, and it's going to dive into the current state of sustainability in the industry and provide a roadmap for agents to create positive change. Because hopefully, and most of you stayed with us through the whole hour, which is brilliant, you've all been engaged by this, because the panel have been excellent, I think, in that, and helping us to understand a little bit more about how change can happen. And this is going to be the first survey of its kind in the domestic property sector, and it's going to shine a light on awareness of the situation and the levels of action that are being taken. And in order to do this, we need as much information as possible from you, the agents. So if you complete the Agents for Sustainability survey, which, as I say, won't take more than 5 minutes, you will allow us to get, and Just Move In, to get a deeper sense of the agent's perspective on the matter, your perspective, which really matters. And we're going to share this with you. And as I mentioned, the mangrove tree comes into play here, because for every survey that we get a response to, a mangrove tree will be planted. So you've got huge incentive to do it. First of all, because your opinion matters, and the industry can only grow with that kind of feedback, but also we can plant trees if you fill the survey in. So please go and do that when you get your link to that. And thank you very much for Tom and Just Move In for producing that as well. That completes our hour, and it's been fascinating, and you've given so much to us in terms of the questions and also staying with us, and clearly you're engaged by what you've heard from our panel. So let's just thank them. Tom, thank you so much. Keep doing your great things with Just Move In. Grant from Negotiator, Grant Leonard, thank you. Amy as well, with that really brilliant practical kind of takeout advice coming from other businesses outside of this sector, and also for bringing mosquitoes into play for Sarah and her elephants today, and also the brilliant again advice that you've given, Sarah. And I think, you know, some of that, just breaking things down and doing things in small steps is really, really important, because it can feel, can't it, just huge and enormous. And especially when you hear the global figures on our environment, it sometimes feels like we are so tiny in this mess that we've allowed the planet to get into. So thank you for that. And Mary as well, for all of that information that you've given us, that Hamptons are doing so much that you're involved in there, that I think will inspire so many other agents today. So thank you very much to all of you. Have a great afternoon. And from all of us, just to say, we are going to be sharing the link to the survey via email after the webinar. 5 minutes, fill it in, and a mangrove tree will be planted in your honour. Take care, everybody. It's been great to see you today. Bye-bye.